Welcome back. We're diving back into this wild world of the holographic universe.
Yeah, picking up where we left off with Stephen Davis's workshop.
This is actually part 2 of our discussion
Yeah,
out of 5.
exactly. 5 parts to his workshop. You guys can find a link to his stuff down in the description.
Yeah, so last time we explored this crazy idea that the physical universe isn't really made of solid matter,
Right.
but is more like, well, a hologram.
Exactly. We laid some groundwork in part 1, but now things get really interesting. Like, how is this holographic reality created?
Yeah, and what role do our brains even play in all this?
Get ready for some serious aha moments, guys.
Oh, I am so ready. Where do we begin?
Well, I think we have to start with the brain itself.
Okay.
There's this theory that our brains actually operate like holograms.
Hmm.
Yeah, the key figure here is a guy named Dr. Carl Pribram,
Okay.
a neurosurgeon who spent like his whole career trying to figure out how and where memories are stored in the brain.
Interesting. So how did he come to believe that the brain is a hologram?
Well, early research showed that memory wasn't localized,
Yeah.
like in individual brain cells. It wasn't just one spot.
Yeah.
So Pribram, after he connected with this quantum physicist, David Bohm,
Okay.
he proposed that the brain actually functions a lot like a hologram does. Because, you see, holograms can store information in a distributed way
Right.
across the entire medium, not just in one spot.
Okay, so instead of memories being like files saved on a hard drive,
Hmm.
they're more like information in a hologram, spread out across the whole brain.
That's it. And just like a hologram acts as a lens, transforming all these seemingly random frequencies into a coherent image, Pribram thinks our brains do something similar.
Wow.
He argues that the brain uses holographic principles to basically translate sensory input into our internal perception. Think of it like this. Our brains are taking in all these wave frequencies from the world around us. And then they mathematically construct what we perceive as like this solid reality.
That's kind of blowing my mind right now.
Yeah.
So instead of our senses passively taking in like an objective reality that's just there,
Right.
we're actually projecting a reality
Yeah.
based on frequencies.
That's the idea. And this brings us to Pribram's like key statement.
Okay.
He says, our brains mathematically construct hard reality by relying on input from a frequency domain.
So the brain isn't just receiving a finished product from the outside world.
No.
It's actively creating our perception of reality
Yeah.
based on the information that it receives.
Exactly. It's almost like our brains are receiving a program from some kind of cosmic Wi-Fi
Right.
and then projecting it as our reality.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of get that analogy.
That's great. And it's fascinating how this connects with what Nikola Tesla believed.
Uh,
He once said, "My brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, inspiration."
So both Pribram and Tesla, they both believe that our brains were tapping into something
Yeah.
larger than themselves.
Yes, absolutely. And what makes their insights even more intriguing are all these scientific experiments
Okay.
that seem to support this whole holographic brain theory.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. What kind of experiments?
Well, there are a few really mind-boggling ones that suggest that our brains might be working in ways we never even imagined. Like one example
Okay.
is Dr. Benjamin Libet's experiment back in the late 1970s.
Okay. What did Libet's experiment show?
Well, he was working with patients undergoing brain surgery.
Mhm.
And while they were under local anesthesia,
Okay.
he stimulated their fingers and measured their brain activity.
Wait, so they were awake during brain surgery?
Yeah, they were aware they could report their sensations.
Wow.
And what Libet found was just astonishing.
Okay.
The patients reported feeling the finger stimulus before the corresponding signal even reached the area of the brain responsible for processing touch.
So they felt the touch before their brains even processed it.
Yeah, it's like their brains knew what was coming before it even happened.
That's incredible.
Exactly. It really challenged the linear way we think about time and perception. This finding, it baffled scientists, even led to the controversial idea of time reversal.
Wow.
But Libet himself couldn't find any neurological evidence for that.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
But is there more evidence like this?
Oh, absolutely. Dr. Dean Radin, he conducted experiments where participants had these physiological responses
Right.
to emotionally charged images. Things like a spike in heart rate.
Okay.
But here's the thing. It happened before they were even shown the images.
So, like, They had some kind of premonition
Right.
of what was about to appear?
These findings suggest that the brain might be reacting to information before it's consciously perceived, which is just, well,
Definitely mind-bending.
mind-bending.
You mentioned other studies, too.
Yes. There was one in a BBC documentary where researchers were actually able to predict which button a participant would press, like up to 6 seconds
Wow.
before the participant made the conscious decision.
What?
By observing specific brain activity patterns, they could tell which choice the person was going to make before the person even knew it themselves.
Are we saying that free will is an illusion, then?
It's not that simple, but these experiments definitely suggest that our brains, our consciousness, the nature of reality, they're all far more complex and interconnected than we ever thought before.
Okay, so we've got these mind-blowing experiments that seem to show our brains accessing information before we're even consciously aware of it.
Right.
But how does all of this connect to the idea of a holographic universe?
That's the exciting part. If we bring together Prebrum's holographic brain theory with these experimental findings and, what we know about quantum physics, a really remarkable picture begins to emerge. Imagine a vast, infinite source of holographic possibilities, like a cosmic library, containing the blueprints for every potential reality.
So are you saying our brains are tapping into this, cosmic library?
Exactly. Our brains are acting as these holographic projectors. They receive wave frequencies from this field, and then through a process similar to collapsing the wave function in quantum mechanics, our brains translate those waves into the particles that make up the physical world.
So our brains are creating the 3D hologram we perceive as reality, instead of just passively taking in information from the outside.
That's the idea. And remember those experiments we were talking about? They suggest that this process might even be happening a few seconds ahead of our conscious awareness.
Wait, so my brain is constructing my reality and it's doing it a few seconds before I even know it?
Pretty mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
Your senses, sight, hearing, touch, they're not just receiving information from the outside world, they're actively projecting that world first.
Wow.
And then perceiving the feedback. It's not a one-way street of passive perception.
It's an interactive dance between our brains in this field.
Okay, so if our brains are constructing reality, does that mean there's, one giant universal hologram that we're all plugged into? Is that what we mean by the holographic universe?
That's a great question. And the answer might surprise you. It's likely that each of us is projecting our own unique individual hologram.
Wait, why wouldn't we all experience the same reality if it's all just one big hologram?
Well, remember, Prebrum's theory suggests that each brain acts as its own holographic processor.
Right.
And we don't all perceive the world in exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Our individual experiences, our memories, our interpretations, they all influence how we translate the frequencies from the field into our personal realities. It's like we each have our own unique lens through which we experience the world.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. Two people can watch the same movie and come away with completely different interpretations of it. Exactly. Or think about how people at a party, they'll remember the same events differently.
Right.
Depending on their perspective and who they interacted with. Their individual experiences shaped how they perceived and remembered what happened.
That makes sense.
And think about individuals with, say, mental health conditions.
Okay.
They experience reality very differently from what's considered, quote-unquote, normal.
Right.
This diversity of experience suggests that we're not all tuned into the same channel. We each have our own unique frequency, our own interpretation of the holographic information that we're receiving from this field.
This is also fascinating, but I have to admit, it's a lot to process. I'm starting to wonder if we're all running our own holographic simulations, where does the information for those simulations even come from? Who or what is choosing the specific frequencies that shape our individual realities? It's like asking, who's writing the code for our holographic movies?
That is the million-dollar question, and it's definitely one we'll delve into more deeply in the next part of our discussion. But first, I think it'd be helpful to revisit the double slit experiment.
Okay.
It offers some really profound insights into the nature of reality and how observation itself can influence what we perceive as real.
You mean the experiment that showed that reality isn't as fixed and objective as we once thought?
That's the one.
Okay, I'm ready to dive back in.
Great. Because the double slit experiment is crucial for understanding this whole holographic universe concept.
Okay.
It shows us that reality is much more dynamic
Hmm.
and responsive to observation
Yeah.
than we might realize. And in the next part of our conversation,
Yeah.
we'll explore even more mind-bending concepts like
Hmm.
delayed quantum erasure
Okay.
and what it reveals about the role of information in shaping our, holographic experience.
Okay. Yeah.
Get ready for another layer of aha moments.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm already hooked.
Great.
This is great.
So, ready to revisit the double slit experiment.
Absolutely. One of those experiments that really makes you question, like, everything you thought you knew about reality.
Right.
It shows that the act of observing something can actually change how it behaves.
Right. Exactly. And to really understand its implications for the holographic universe,
Hmm.
we're going to turn to physicist Thomas Campbell.
Hmm.
He explains it in a way that really highlights
Okay.
the role of information in shaping reality.
Okay, I'm all ears. How does Campbell interpret the double slit experiment?
Well, he emphasizes the significance of information. Think back to the basic setup. You have single photons, particles of light, being fired at a barrier with two slits. What happens?
Well, they create a diffraction pattern, right, on the screen behind the barrier.
Yeah.
It's like each photon is going through both slits at the same time, even though it's just one particle.
Right. It's like they're behaving like waves instead of particles.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets even stranger. If you use detectors to measure which slit each photon goes through, the diffraction pattern disappears.
Oh, wow.
Instead, you get two distinct bands as if the photons are now behaving like particles again.
So the act of observing, of trying to measure which slit the photon goes through, changes how it behaves. Like they know they're being watched.
Exactly. And this is where Campbell introduces the concept of delayed quantum erasure, which takes this idea to a whole new level.
Okay.
Even after the experiment is done,
Hmm.
if you erase the measurement data without ever looking at it, the diffraction pattern returns.
Oh, wait, seriously.
Yeah, it's as if reality is retroactively changed,
Wow.
depending on whether or not the information about which slit the photon went through was ever observed.
So if we choose not to look at the information, it's like the photons never chose a slit in the first place.
That's the mind-blowing implication. It suggests that the information itself plays a fundamental role in determining what we perceive as reality. And this really challenges the idea of a fixed objective reality out there. Instead, it points towards a more probabilistic, information-based universe.
Okay, so our reality isn't set in stone. It's constantly being shaped by the availability of information.
You got it. It's almost like a video game,
Yeah.
where the graphics only fully render when you're looking at them.
That's a great analogy.
And Campbell actually describes it as a virtual reality based on information.
Okay.
The double slit experiment really highlights how the active observation is not passive.
Right.
It's an active participation
Hmm.
in creating reality.
Okay, so we've explored this mind-blowing experiment. I'm starting to see how it all connects.
Yeah.
We've talked about the brain as a hologram, projecting our reality based on frequencies received from this field, this, like, cosmic library.
Right.
We've seen how observation itself can affect the behavior of particles,
Mm.
like in the double slit experiment,
Yes.
and how information is key
Mm.
in shaping what we experience as real.
Exactly.
So where do we go from here? What's this, like, the main takeaway from all this?
The key takeaway is this. We are each projecting our own unique holographic reality. Based on information we receive from the field, our brains act as these holographic projectors,
Right?
translating that information into the particles that make up this 3D world we experience.
Okay, so that old saying, you create your own reality, has some truth to it after all.
Yeah, but it's not as simple as just wishing things into existence, right?
Right.
It's more like we're each projecting our own unique holographic experience
Yeah.
based on the information we're receiving and interpreting.
Exactly.
And the double slit experiment, especially with that delayed quantum erasure phenomenon,
Right.
emphasizes that it's the availability of information that really matters.
Yeah.
The act of observation creates information, and whether that information is accessed or erased, it has this profound impact on the reality that we experience.
But this raises another question for me. If we're projecting our own realities based on information from the field, who or what is choosing that information? Who's deciding which frequencies we receive, which aspects of reality we experience? It's like asking, who's writing the script for our holographic movies?
That is the ultimate question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the answer, well, it's not simple, but Stephen Davis, he tackles this head on in the next part of his workshop series, and I think you'll be fascinated by what he proposes.
I'm ready. This has been such an incredible exploration so far. So before we jump into the next part, does Davis give us any, homework?
He does. He recommends watching the movie The Truman Show.
I love that movie.
It's a classic that explores the idea of someone living in a constructed reality without even realizing it.
Yeah, I can definitely see how it connects to what we've been talking about.
And he also suggests that we all try to see the world as a hologram, that we're projecting, rather than this fixed objective reality that's just out there.
That's a great challenge. It's like shifting our perspective from passive observer to active creator.
Exactly. It's all about expanding our awareness and questioning the assumptions
Right.
we've been conditioned to believe about the nature of reality.
Okay, so homework assignment. Watch The Truman Show and practice seeing the world as a hologram.
I love it.
I'm excited to see where this all leads in the next part of our deep dive.
Me too. We're really getting to the heart of the matter now, Who are we? What is the nature of reality? And what is the source of the information that's shaping our holographic experience?
Can't wait to explore those questions. See you in part 3. Okay, so we're back. Ready to wrap up our exploration of Stephen Davis's Holographic Universe Workshop.
Absolutely. This is the 3rd out of 5 parts in his series.
And we've covered some seriously mind-bending stuff, from the brain being a hologram to the double-slit experiment.
Right.
But I feel like that big question is still kind of hanging in the air. Like, who or what is choosing the information that shapes our individual realities?
Yeah, who's writing the script?
Yeah, who's writing the script for our holographic movies?
That's a question that really leads us to explore the nature of consciousness itself.
Okay.
And Stephen Davis, he proposes this idea that the quote-unquote script writer is actually a higher aspect of ourselves, a non-physical consciousness that he calls the higher self.
Okay, higher self. That sounds a bit like spiritual,
Yeah.
Not necessarily something you'd hear in a discussion about quantum physics and holograms.
I get it. It can sound a little out there. But Davis, he isn't suggesting that there's this mystical being separate from us pulling strings.
Right.
He's pointing to the idea that our consciousness actually extends beyond our physical brain and body. It's like there's a deeper, more expansive aspect of ourselves that exists, beyond space and time.
Okay.
And this higher self, he suggests, is intimately involved in shaping our holographic experiences.
So it's not like a puppet master controlling our every move.
No.
It's more like we have a co-author, a higher dimensional part of ourselves, kind of guiding the experience.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Davis suggests that this higher self has access to a much broader perspective than our limited ego-driven personalities, right? It sees the bigger picture, the interconnectedness of everything, and it chooses experiences for us that are designed to support our growth and evolution.
So it's like our holographic realities are personalized learning programs almost.
Yeah.
Custom designed by our higher selves.
Exactly.
To help us evolve.
And this perspective, it helps to explain why there's such a vast diversity of human experience, We all have unique challenges, talents, lessons to learn.
Yeah.
Our holographic realities are reflections of our individual journeys, providing us with the opportunities we need to grow and expand.
But okay, if our higher selves are so wise and compassionate, why is there so much pain and suffering and confusion in our lives?
That's a great question. And Davis, he addresses this by emphasizing the concept of free will. Our higher selves might be guiding us towards growth, but we still have the choice to resist that guidance, to make decisions that lead us down more challenging paths. We can deviate from the script, so to speak, creating detours and obstacles in our holographic journeys.
So we have the freedom to choose, even if those choices don't always line up with the wisdom of our higher selves. It's like we're actors who can go off script and improvise, even if it means we might stumble a bit.
Exactly. And sometimes those improvisations, those moments where we choose to learn things the hard way, they actually lead to some of the most profound growth, They force us to confront our limitations, learn from our mistakes, and ultimately choose a path that aligns with our, highest good.
So it's not about blaming our higher selves for our struggles. It's about recognizing our own role in creating our experiences and taking responsibility for our choices.
That's right. And Davis suggests that the more we connect with our higher selves, the more we align our choices with, like, the intentions of our souls, the more harmonious and fulfilling our holographic experiences actually become. It's not about denying our free will.
Right.
It's about learning to use it consciously
Yep.
to co-create a reality that reflects our, our truest nature.
So how do we actually connect with our higher selves? Is there like a specific technique or something like meditation or prayer that can help?
There are a lot of practices that can help us strengthen that connection, and Davis recommends a variety of approaches. Meditation, mindfulness, those can help quiet the mind, create space for inner listening.
Yeah.
Journaling can help us tap into our subconscious, uncover hidden beliefs and patterns. Spending time in nature can help us feel more connected to something larger than ourselves.
So it sounds like it's about cultivating a sense of inner awareness,
Yeah.
learning to trust our intuition, and paying attention to the subtle guidance that comes from within.
It's like we all have this internal compass that's
Yeah.
always pointing us in the right direction. We just need to learn how to read it and trust its guidance.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, is there like a final thought or takeaway you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think the most profound realization is this. We are not just characters in a movie. We are the directors, the producers, the scriptwriters, and the audience all rolled into one. We have the power to shape our experiences, learn from them, and create a reality that reflects the love, wisdom, and creativity that reside at the core of our being.
That's a beautiful way to put it. We're not just passive recipients of reality.
Yeah.
We are active participants in its creation.
We are, and I think that's what makes this whole holographic universe idea so empowering, It reminds us that we are not victims of circumstance,
Right.
but powerful creators with the ability to shape our own experiences.
Well, I think we've covered an incredible amount of ground in this deep dive.
I think so, too.
We've explored these mind-blowing concepts of the holographic universe, the mysteries of the brain and consciousness, and even touched on the spiritual implications of it all. We've challenged some fundamental assumptions about reality, and I hope we've given our listeners a lot to think about.
I hope so, too.
I know I have.
A lot to explore further.
This has been a truly fascinating journey, and I want to thank you for guiding us through it.
It's been my pleasure. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us
Yes.
on this deep dive into the holographic universe.
Keep questioning, keep exploring,
Yeah.
and keep creating the reality of your dreams.